Viewers, welcome back to the Personal Injury Law Show. Before the break, we were talking about the interesting case of Lanza and Patterson. Alice, can you tell us a bit more about the facts of this case?
Well, Tony, this is an interesting case on a lot of levels, but one of the things that came out during the course of the trial was that the doctor had failed to consider properly a mammogram that the patient had undergone before the operation, which showed she had very dense breast tissue and which ultimately made her unsuitable for the type of operation that he was proposing. And he didn't really discuss that with her. He really didn't bother going into that and just said, oh, of course you can have the liposuction, because that was why she had come in the first place.
And Nunes, the reality is he wasn't really an expert to perform the surgery that he performed.
No, look, he wasn't, Tony, and that was borne out in the proceeding. And look, he had this new procedure of breast liposuction, but it was all good in theory, but in practice really didn't know how to execute it. And look, that's the worry. And she ended up having the full-blown surgery after all that, which was, you know, disastrous for her, because that's what she wanted to try to avoid. So
she also, of interest, Alice, there was this other doctor that was assisting in the surgery. She said that she didn't know that there was another doctor involved.
No, that's right, Tony. It really only came out during the course of the trial that there had been 2 doctors operating on this lady while she was on the table, and that's something that she had not been advised of.
And they were doing an equal amount of work on each breast.
That's right, and I believe they were also swapping during the operation as well, so it wasn't a small or insignificant
difference. She sounded like a
difference.
guinea pig to me, Nunes.
Yeah.
it was a bit like that. I think it's like for their trialling of this procedure, and you know, again, it's horrific.
But he also gave evidence that he's done quite a few of these procedures.
He did, Tony, although I think at the end of the day, the court didn't seem to think that helped him be an expert. He was holding himself out to be someone he wasn't, and this lady suffered the consequences at the end of the day.
And Nunes, during the trial, they amended the statement of claim because the plaintiff says that she discovered that there's a second doctor during the trial.
Yeah, they changed their, I suppose, the way they shaped their case by saying that if she was aware of this second surgeon being involved in the surgery, that she wouldn't have undergone it. And the doctor put his case saying that, look, she was aware of it because on the invoice it had that there was a fee for the second doctor.
Of 7.5% of the value of the fees.
Yeah, I think it was 7.5% of about $4,000. So, you know, I think the court found that you wouldn't arguably think a doctor would charge so little. So how could she know there was a second surgeon involved?
Alice, just on that point there, the second doctor was charging $300 out of a total of $4,900. Was that a doctor or?
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't get involved in something like this for that sort of money.
No, I think there are some people out there who wouldn't get out of bed for that kind of money, Tony. But at the end of the day, it seems an insignificant amount, and maybe that was to divert the patient from understanding the real extent of the involvement. We'll never know, I think, but I understand that doctors charge a lot higher than that.
It just sounds outrageous.
But I think this case is a lesson, though, Tony and Alice, about this client wanted to avoid, I suppose, recuperation and also time off work, and she went for maybe the easier option. And when you're dealing with your body and your physical state, just be careful and make informed decisions. I think it made sense if it all worked out, but in case it didn't, and when you're dealing with your body, don't take that risk. That's my personal opinion.
I also think the court's highlighting that they're no longer going to accept a doctor as knowing what's right for the patient. They're basically saying communicate risks.
That's right, Tony. It seems the court is encouraging doctors to be much more objective and just
open.
Give them the facts and let the patient make the decision for themselves. As Nunzio said, the real tragedy in this case is this lady went through the normal breast reduction surgery in the end because of what had happened to her under the care of Dr. Lanza.
So, in short, the court found that the procedure that the Dr. Lanza was performing was inappropriate for this lady.
That's right.
And she's gone through a lot of pain and suffering.
Yep.
But having said that, she didn't get much money.
$50,000, I think it was.
$50,000
for that type of surgery. I think it's a bit low. But
it almost sounds to me that the jury wanted to look after her, but really didn't want to look after her. So yeah,
that's right.
That's another topic I want to discuss in future, whether the jury systems become out of date. But let's get on to the next case of Wolf, Albin, and Wolf. Who's going to give me the facts?
Oh, look, this is a case, Tony, in which Miss Wolf went to have a breast reduction, and it was performed ultimately by Dr. Alburn. Had the surgery. Look, for all intents and purposes, it appeared that it all went well. Post-operatively, but while she's still in hospital, had some issues, and the issue in this case is whether the doctor was negligent in letting her go home so early, and that's really the basis of this case.
And Alice, what did the court find?
The court found in this instance, this is a really interesting case, Tony, because it turns out, by the by, that the doctor and the lady knew each other very well. They went to the same synagogue together and they'd known each other over many years. I think their children went to the same school. Yeah,
yes.
that's right. And what the court found, essentially, the poor lady suffered a post-operative infection and the doctor didn't visit her following the operation and let the hospital discharge her the 1 or 2 days later. And the court said essentially that had the doctor just gone in to check up on her treatment after the operation would have been different, and that he had breached his duty of care in his follow-up care after the operation. So nothing wrong with the actual operation, more about what happened afterwards.
Well, just curiously, in this case here, she'd been to see another doctor, so she'd been warned about a lot of the different risks associated with surgery. And there was also a handbook given out by the doctor.
Well, look, ultimately in this case it was found that she was advised really by 2 doctors. One, the first initial doctor she saw before Dr. Olborn, in which he provided her, I suppose, information on the risks of the surgery.
And was unavailable to do the surgery.
That's why she went to Dr. Olborn. And then Dr. Olborn provided her with a blue handbook in which it obviously went through all the risks of the surgery and, they say it was adequate enough. That was part of the case in which Miss Wolf thought it wasn't adequate, but that was an issue for the court and it was found in the doctor's favour.
And I think it's really interesting too, Tony, that despite the other doctor getting involved before she saw Olborn and giving her a much better understanding of the risks and complications, the court said despite that, she wasn't looked after properly. So she might have made an informed decision, or as informed as she was going to get, but she wasn't looked after properly following the operation.
So the case was obviously not decided on the fact that she didn't have knowledge of the risks.
No.
It was decided on the fact that she wasn't followed up properly.
That's right, it's more about the management of the risks.
But is it fair to say, I mean, if you went into hospital for any surgery, surely you'd want to see your surgeon after the operation at some stage?
I would have thought it's a
Certainly
must.
would, just to know that the operation had gone well.
Look,
I certainly would.
especially if you're having issues with your body, I'd be saying, well, I'm not leaving until I see my surgeon. And
That's right.
that'd be my position. But
That's right.
I had a family member undergo surgery some time ago, and I got a phone call off the surgeon to say that one of the nurses injected her with a needle that caused a hemorrhage. And my response was, well, under whose direction did she give the needle?
Yes.
And he said, oh, well, she didn't ask anyone. But surely, isn't it for the surgeon to give directions and instructions on what to do, Alice?
And to be across the care generally, I would have thought so.
they're the experts.
I think it's bizarre, isn't it? Does it just show that there's a lack of communication in that area of practice?
I think it's a possibility, Tony, especially given the fact that a lot of doctors are worried that their patients, there will be backlash if there are any problems, and they tend not to get involved too much, and that can cause a lot of problems, ironically.
Okay. Well, look, the moral to the story is make sure, doctors, that you give enough information to patients, and if they're asking you any questions, answer them. Viewers, we're not going to go to the mailbag after the break because there's an important landmark High Court decision which we want to discuss. So please stay tuned and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.